Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome to another film review. Tonight we're looking at something a little bit different. Is it a horror story? To an extent it is, to a way that humans treat humans that are different or suffering with disabilities or illnesses. So it's horror in that sense. But tonight we're looking at The Elephant Man. Now this edition here is released by Studio Canal. It's another one of those special editions of theirs that opens up and you get like a pop-up sort of cover of the hospital. It is the 4K release. You're going to have to bear with me because it takes a bit of a effort to get it out. So it comes with a 4K and 2 Blu-rays and lots of special features. It also comes with some art cards, so let's show you those. It's my favourite one. So it's got some art cards, and it also comes with a large sort of booklet with photos and essays from the film and about the original John Merrick, because this is based on the true story of John Merrick, who suffered from elephantitis, which was a brand new sort of like, probably not brand new, but it was in the Victorian times is when it came prolific to sort of like the first knew about it. And this film is based on the life of John Merrick. It is filmed in black and white and stars Anthony Hopkins as the Doctor and stars John Hurt as John Merrick, the Elephant Man. and the film is filmed in a wonderful sort of Victorian environment in sort of London, and we see like a sort of fair. And it's like these were common sort of fairs back in the time when they had sort of freak shows and stuff in amongst these fairs, where they used to show like bearded women and things like this. And the Elephant Man, John Merrick, was a part of it. And Anthony Hopkins plays our Doctor, and he's there and he's very intrigued to want to see this Elephant Man. So he goes to the to the part of the show where he's supposed to be showing, but he's not on display. The police that are there, and so are sort of counsellors, and he sort of follows the police officer through this sort of like freak show circus part of this sort of fair to where John Merrick is. Excuse me, but he can't see him because they won't show him, and the council are threatening to shut this guy down because he's sort of like benefiting or manipulating this poor man's disability. And so we don't get to see John Merrick at this point. The crowd gets shown away, and so he gets taken away. And we see that Anthony Hopkins is like a famous surgeon, as we see him at work in the London hospital. And he's doing this surgery, and while he's performing this surgery, a young lad knocks on the door and says, "I found him." And he goes, "Have you seen him?" He says, "No, but I know where he is." So after the surgery, we then go back down the streets of London, and we're all around the sort of back streets of sort of like It looks sort of like East End sort of London, down to sort of like East End of London, like heading towards sort of Whitechapel, Limehouse sort of area. And there's all these sort of street traders going on, like butchers and beer makers and all this sort of like industries going on. And we see all this happening as the doctor's walking his way through these streets. And he's heading down towards where this lad's told him to go. And eventually he reaches the place where the lad meets him, and he takes him down to where the Elephant Man is. And so he goes down there and he pays the so-called owner, if you like, to see this this poor man. So he then takes him into the room, which is quite dark, and shows him John Merrick. And the doctor is absolutely taken back. His eyes are wide and is absolutely in sort of shock and awe at the same time. And this sort of scene where we see sort of outlines of John Merrick, we don't really see him at this point. The doctor's face is just like shows you every expression of sort of like horror of this poor man, of what he's, of the sort of the deformities that he's got and things. Because elephantitis is like a deformity sort of disease, where I believe sort of like all the glands and things are all kind of like they're destroyed and exposed and sort of blown up. So all your glands and on your head are all sort of blown up, and you got like disfigurements, hunchbacked, and all these sort of things that are going on, and sort of tumours all over the sort of body and things like this. And it's probably a ghastly illness. I don't know I know that there is still cases of it about, but it's not sort of like we're more understanding of it now. I think of these sort of deformities and sort of these illnesses that have these sort of deformities. Anyway, he's really taken back by it, and he's arranged for the man to send John Merrick to his hospital for examinations, and he's paid him to do so. So the next day we're at the hospital, the waiting room, and there's full of sort of people there, and it all goes quiet as John Merrick arrives at the hospital, and he's wearing like a hat, and he's wearing like a sack over his face to cover him up, and he's got this poor limp. He's, you know, he can barely walk properly with a stick. So he arrives there with a taxi driver, and he's greeted by Anthony Hopkins at the reception, who then takes him to his room to sort of like examine him. And so he starts trying asking him questions, but he's not getting any replies from John Merrick. And he thinks he calls John Merrick an imbecile at one point, saying that he's an idiot, he can't talk or nothing. But we know he's not. He's just been restrained so much to not talk because of he's being like a circus freak at the show. Anyway, so he's there for a while, and he tries to examine him, and he takes him to one of his lectures, and he takes him to the lecture where he all these other doctors are there, and he shows it to them. We don't get to see John Merrick at this stage. We just see the outline behind like a curtain shadow, and he does a presentation on him, and they all applaud him, and what an amazing doctor he is. But he ain't done nothing or anything yet. But anyway, then John Merrick goes back to where he lives with his so-called sort of like circus owner, and gets a rather big beating from his owner because he's late back. And he gets a brutal beating to the point where he can barely breathe. The young boy's there, and he's telling the guy to stop it, you're hurting him. And the lovely young lad goes back to the doctors and tells him, please come and help him, he can't breathe barely. So the doctor rushes to John Merrick's assistants, and sees that he's been badly beaten, but the owner sort of, no, he's fallen over, he's fallen and all this. And he knows that he's not. Anyway, he's told him he needs to go to the hospital. The owner won't let him go, but he said he's got to go or he's going to die. So he eventually lets him go to the hospital. And now at the hospital, Anthony Hopkins now gives him his own place at the top of the building by the clock tower, and he keeps listening to the clock going and the bell. But this is his own sort of room away from everything. And we see the head of the hospital, who's played by Sir John Guildford, and he plays an amazing part in the film too. Make sure I got his name right. I can't remember his name. And also Anne Bancroft's in this film. It's quite a big cast in this film, which is really, really cool. And he lets him stay at the hospital and lets him live at the hospital. And the story sort of follows him as he starts to open up a bit, and then starts to talk. And he finds out what an intelligent man John Merrick is. And he underestimated him as like I said, as an idiot when he is not. And he becomes a little bit of a sort of kind of celebrity. He gets, gets visited by the Queen, and he gets visited by other sort of like posh people. They all want to be seen with John Merrick because he's like a discovery. And it's not and this is a different kind of freak show, but it's a more freak show that's a benefit for John Merrick, because he gets taken away from this horrendous lifestyle that he was living at this sort of freak show, just in a sort of a sort of cellar room where it was dripping with water and being beaten by his owner and stuff like this, and just being put on show and laughed at by public. And there's some parts of the scenes where he's at the hospital, the porter of the film takes him out to show off to his girlfriends and get him drunk and all this sort of thing and mistreat him. So all these sort of there's two sides of the story here. You got the doctors and that are trying to help him. They know they can't cure him or anything, but they're trying to help his life and sort of study his illness. And then you've got the sort of the Londoner who doesn't understand what he is, and they're just making fun out of him and treating him like a freak. And the story is based on these two sort of storylines, and poor John Merrick stuck in the middle. This is a true story, and I believe that at the museum, the hospital museum, you can still see the skeleton of John Merrick there, preserved. And that's all I'm going to tell you about the film. It's an incredible story. It's a horror story in the sense of like the way that is portrayed as this sort of freak, when all he is he's a poor human being that's got these deformities. He's got this poor illness, elephantitis, that's made all these sort of tumours on his body, and everything large. His legs are large, like elephant legs and things like this, and he can't help it. And when I first saw the film back in the day, I was shocked by the appearance of John Merrick in the film. But then I was more shocked about how he was treated. And it's a very heartbreaking story. Very, very heartbreaking. It's because you find out what a wonderful, gentle soul that John Merrick is. What do I think of the film? It's an amazing film. It's such a good film. It's really, really cool. This came out, I believe it must have been in the 80s. Um, I can't remember the year the actual film came out, but I remember seeing it when I was in my teens, I believe, and it affected me at the time. Trying to see if it's got when it was made. The writing on here is so small, I can't really see it. Anyway, the pluses of this edition, the 4K is phenomenal, absolutely pristine picture. I know it's black and white, so it's going to be easier probably to master into 4K, but it looks stunning, absolutely stellar. And talking of stellar, the acting is incredible. John Hurt plays the amazing role of John Merrick. I'm not sure if he was awarded an Oscar for this. Something tells me he was. I'm not sure. But Anthony Hopkins' portrayal as the Doctor is fantastic as well. All the cast are believable. You get so drawn into the story. Yes, it's not an action film. There's some sort of scenes of cruelty, the way they treat him. But there's no sort of like action as to say. But you don't need it. It's a story of a man who has been misunderstood because of his inflictions and his illness, and it's his story of at last being treated as a human being and given the opportunity to live whatever part of life he has left in a sort of comfort. And it's that kind of story, and it's a wonderful tale, although a very sad tale. So I'm going to score The Elephant Man an essential watch and give it 10 out of 10. It's a 10 out of 10 film. It's an amazing film. I don't really class it too much as a horror film. I class it more of a true story drama film. But there's got elements of horror in the way that human beings treat other human beings that are different, and you feel it, and you feel for John Merrick throughout the whole film. You really do. It's a tearjerker at the end. That's all I'm going to say. So, Elephant Man, 10 out of 10. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below what you think of it. I mean, it's one of those classic British films, and it's a amazing cast. It's well acted, telling a true story of this poor man John Merrick, and I recommend you watch it if you can. Until next time, guys, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I see you all soon.